He lived a life most people could only dream of. Private jets, luxury mansions, a private island in the Caribbean. He moved among presidents, billionaires, and royalty. But behind the image of wealth and power was a secret world that would shock the globe. This is the story of Jeffrey Epstein, a man whose influence reached the highest levels, and whose downfall exposed one of the most disturbing scandals in modern history. And yet, even after his death, the biggest questions remain unanswered. Jeffrey Epstein was born on January 20th, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York. His upbringing was modest. His father worked for the city parks department, and his mother was a homemaker. There were no signs of the extraordinary wealth that would later define his life. But from an early age, Epstein stood out. He was intelligent, observant, and quietly ambitious. He attended local public schools and later enrolled at Cooper Union, followed by New York University. But he never completed his degree. For most people, that would have limited their future. For Epstein, it didn't. Because what he lacked in formal education, he made up for in something else: the ability to navigate people, influence, and opportunity. Epstein's entry into elite society didn't begin on Wall Street. It began in a classroom. In the 1970s, he secured a job teaching at the Dalton School, a prestigious private school in Manhattan. There, he wasn't just teaching students. He was building connections with their families, some of the wealthiest in New York. One of those connections would change his life forever. Through this network, Epstein was introduced to the world of finance. He joined Bear Stearns, one of the most powerful investment banks at the time. And despite his unconventional background, he thrived. Epstein showed a talent for understanding complex financial systems. But more importantly, he understood people. He knew how to gain trust and how to position himself as indispensable. Within a few years, he left the firm to start his own financial operation. And from that point on, his wealth began to grow rapidly. But unlike other financiers, Epstein remained unusually secretive. Epstein claimed to manage billions of dollars for ultra-wealthy clients. But there was a problem. No one seemed to know exactly who those clients were. There were no public records, no clear disclosures. Just a carefully constructed image of immense wealth. He owned multiple properties: a mansion in Manhattan, estates in Palm Beach, New Mexico, Paris, and a private island known as Little St. James. The lifestyle was undeniable, but the source of his fortune remained unclear. Some believed he was a financial genius operating in elite circles. Others suspected something more hidden, more complicated. And that mystery would only deepen as time went on. Epstein didn't just accumulate wealth, he accumulated influence. He surrounded himself with powerful individuals, people who shaped politics, business, and global affairs. Among those associated with him were figures like Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew. These relationships gave Epstein access to the highest levels of society. He hosted gatherings, traveled internationally, and built an image of legitimacy. To the outside world, he was untouchable. But behind that image, something darker was unfolding. At the center of Epstein's inner circle was Ghislaine Maxwell, a British socialite with deep connections of her own. She wasn't just a companion, she was a gatekeeper to his world. Prosecutors would later allege that Maxwell played a critical role in recruiting young girls, introducing them to Epstein, and maintaining the system that operated around him. Together, they created an environment that appeared luxurious on the surface, but concealed deeply troubling realities beneath. Over time, allegations began to surface. Young girls reported being approached, offered opportunities, money, or assistance, only to find themselves drawn into Epstein's world. Survivors later described patterns: recruitment, manipulation, and exploitation. It wasn't isolated incidents. It was structured, repeated, and protected. For years, these voices struggled to be heard. But eventually, the truth began to emerge. In 2008, Epstein faced criminal charges in Florida. Many expected a major trial, but instead, a controversial plea deal was reached. Epstein served just 13 months in custody, with significant privileges, including work release. The deal was widely criticized. Critics argued that it allowed Epstein to avoid full accountability. For the victims, it felt like justice had been denied. And for years, the case faded from public attention. But the story didn't end there. Investigative journalists revisited the case. New evidence came forward. More victims spoke out. Public outrage began to grow. In 2019, Epstein was arrested again, this time on federal charges. It seemed that justice might finally catch up to him. The world was watching closely. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. The official ruling was suicide, but the circumstances raised serious concerns. Reports of malfunctioning cameras, lapses in supervision, and a high-profile prisoner who held sensitive information. Questions spread rapidly, and for many, the answers didn't feel complete. Epstein's death did not bring closure. Instead, it intensified the search for truth. Investigations continued into his associates, including Ghislaine Maxwell, who was later convicted on related charges. The case left behind a legacy of unanswered questions about power, influence, and accountability, and about how such a system could exist for so long without being stopped. The story of Jeffrey Epstein is not just about one individual. It is about systems that failed, voices that were ignored, and truths that remain hidden. And until every question is answered, this story is not over. This is research-based video. We just highlights the few points. However, to more detail, check the links given in description.